Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a crazy story out of Michigan. Doug sent it to me. And a guy had a wild turkey move into his backyard. And at one point in time, the city ticketed him for that. Apparently, you're not supposed to have a wild turkey in your backyard, which, of course, is a difficult thing to control because they are, in fact, wild. And they do what they want, those turkeys. So Garden City man fights ticket for turkey who moved into his backyard. Francis X. Donnelly wrote for the Detroit News, paper I did not deliver as a young man. Mark Johnston's wife had just left him in March, talking about a year ago, when he was visited by a stranger who refused to leave. That was a big turkey, a gargantuan turkey. Guesstimating it weighs 30 pounds, moved into his backyard. He didn't invite it in, but it's there and it stayed. So Johnston, who had been married for 9 years, didn't mind the company. He may not have been the only one with a tender heart because the turkey was seen for a while with a hen nearby. They may have been a couple, but we're not sure. As of right now, the turkey is by himself. So Johnston, who's a tow truck driver at the age of 45, says, I have no kids. I'm in the middle of a divorce. I have no one at home. He kind of keeps me company. Gives me something to come home to. Has a familiar face, you know. It's turkey, but what the heck. That might have been the end of the tale, but there's a problem. Garden City, like most municipalities, does not allow residents to keep wild animals as pets. So they fined him $100 for keeping the turkey. And adding insult to injury, they charged him another $100 for having a messy yard. Now, he then went and told them, guys, it's not a pet. I don't bring it in the house. It just shows up and it lives in my backyard. And it turns out there's another problem because you can't move the turkey without permission of other people in the wildlife agencies. And so he can't remove it legally, but the city says, well, you can't have it either. But they decided to skip the $100 ticket for the turkey. They said, okay, that's fine. So they dismissed the turkey ticket. And he's now had the turkey in his yard ever since, and a lot of people apparently now like it. So a neighbor says it's crazy, but if the turkey likes it and the guy likes it, leave them alone. And in case you're curious, the man saw strange footprints in his snow-covered yard one day. He's a hunter, but he did not recognize the tracks. And I'm not sure what turkey tracks look like. I've seen wild turkeys before, and I've actually seen quite a few of them. And there's a dirt road I mountain bike on about a mile from my house. And if I can dig up the photographs, I'll post them. But I've seen wild turkeys there before. And I've actually seen a whole group of them, which I'm guessing is a family. Either that or it's a small flock. But I'm talking about 8 or 9 turkeys at one time running around over in these yards and these fields along this dirt road that I ride on. I've never had any trouble with them, but I've heard of people who live in cities where the wild turkeys have wandered into town and done things like looked at the reflections in car doors and then gotten arguments and so on. So he said he saw those footprints, didn't recognize them, but then he heard some noises and he went back and he found the turkey. And apparently the turkey's girlfriend or wife, the female turkey, that couple did hang around for a while, but eventually the smaller one, the female, disappeared. So the turkey apparently likes the yard. He returned in March of last year. And now he's turned his backyard into his home. Johnston said, he just said, I'm staying here. Maybe he likes the yard's overgrowth. That's according to wildlife biologists. William Porter, a wildlife conservation professor at MSU, Michigan State University, says they're looking for safe places to be in the summer. They're used to seeing people. They recognize humans as just another piece of the landscape. Now, turkeys are highly adaptable, he said. He's studied turkeys for 46 years. All they need is a tree to sleep in and enough space to strut around. They are also social creatures. They aren't that scared of people, and in fact may try to intimidate you. They follow a pecking order where the fearful are relegated to the bottom, and that includes humans. And of course, motorists now occasionally stop their cars to take pictures of the turkey in the man's backyard. Kids walk up the fence and exchange clucks with the turkey. One dad said his son now makes gobbling noises all day long, which is either charming or annoying. Take your pick. During the school year, a bus stopped by every morning to let the passengers watch the turkey. And Johnson said, "You might think my backyard is a petting zoo." Now, the turkey does tend to ignore the people. He wanders around the yard, he forages for food, he nibbles on grass, sometimes he sits in the shade or he hides in the weeds with his lumpy head poking above the leaves. He did eat all the fish in a backyard pond, so that might be an issue. Meanwhile, a neighbor who's got a cat says the cat steers clear of the turkey, who, by the way, he has not named the turkey. And that, to me, is a question, because I am, big on naming things in your life if you can. And so, believe it or not, right now, people just call it the turkey. And I would think the turkey needs a name. But Johnston said he doesn't feed his ungainly guests, but city officials said he told them in April he did feed them occasionally. Wild turkeys can be a nuisance, but Johnston's neighbors don't have a problem with the interloper. He might make a little bit of noise, but it seems that on the plus side, kids in the neighborhood seem to get a kick out of it. They come by and they check out the turkey. And so another neighbor says he doesn't bother anyone. You don't even know it's there unless you drive by and happen to see it. So they are about a mile from some woody patches in the neighborhood, and there are a variety of wild animals, including ducks and hawks. A resident saw deer walking down the sidewalk in the middle of the night, like a straggler from a late-night party. And there is apparently also a peacock somewhere in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood peacock apparently goes off sometime around sunrise. But again, getting back to the story of the man getting the ticket, apparently somebody, probably just a city official driving around looking for things to complain about, saw the turkey and walked up and talked to the man, Johnston, who said, "I noticed you have a turkey." That's an officer from the city saying, "I noticed you have a turkey." Johnston said, "It's not my turkey, just a turkey." So the officer took photos and video of the turkey, and then they ticketed him for the yard in which the turkey lived, saying the yard was unkempt. And that's not really what we're talking about here today. But they did ticket him for keeping a wild animal. And meanwhile, the city manager said, "Look, this is not the city being a mean guy. If there's no food or nesting area, it would probably leave. Turkeys don't stay in the middle of a city neighborhood. It doesn't make sense." Well, here's the thing. Wild animals are wild. Newsflash, I understand right now. Some people are writing that down. Some people are arguing. Some people are going to Google that. Are wild animals wild? They don't come when they're called. They don't always do predictable things. And if this turkey has found a yard in which it feels safe and there's food sources nearby, it might be feeding nearby and returning to the yard for safety. And the idea that it would only come there if he was feeding it, not necessarily. And I've had wild animals that lived near my house before. I wasn't encouraging them. In fact, at a point in time, I had dogs. And I know that at one of the houses that I lived in with Milo and Wolfie, there were possums, there were skunks. Wolfie knows about the skunks, but another story altogether. There were rabbits. There were all kinds of animals out there. I didn't encourage them. They are very, very adaptable. They learn to get by. And while the food source might be important, I suspect, and maybe the turkey expert from MSU could dispute this, but I suspect the primary reason that turkey likes that guy's yard is it feels safe there. And hey, it's been there for a year now, and living in a city as a turkey can be difficult. So living there for a year shows that the yard is in fact safe. So the good news is that although they ticketed him for keeping a wild animal, they dismissed the ticket because he said, "Hey, I didn't bring it here. It's not my pet. It's free to leave anytime it wants." But because of the other state laws that says you cannot move wild creatures, there's nothing I can do about it. So Obviously, if he wanted to, he could probably appeal to somebody and say, hey, this turkey's a nuisance. But why do that? If you can just leave it, why do that? And I've mentioned before, probably briefly in passing, I've raised raccoons before. And what happened was a mother with 3 baby raccoons got hit by a car in front of where I lived. And these baby raccoons were motherless, and I bottle fed them until they got big enough to be let loose. And I know somebody who's a licensed wildlife rehabilitator who owns a big piece of property, and I brought them there. So they survived, and I don't know what became of them after that because they were released back into the wild. If you go onto the internet, you can find a lot of videos about people who find orphaned raccoons and raise them because as youngsters, they're extremely docile. It's a cross between a kitten and a puppy, but with hands. They're really, really cool animals. And the problem, of course, is that they're wild animals. And once they hit puberty, their personality changes. You do not want to have a wild raccoon in your house, even if you raised it, because raccoons, by their very nature, are wild. And I know there's stories out there about people who've had pet raccoons. There's a children's book, Rascal, about a raccoon. I read it when I was a kid. That makes it sound like, oh, they're going to grow up and instead of being a cool cross between a kitten and a puppy, now it's going to be a cross between a cat and a dog. It's not quite how it works. But I think a lot of people mistakenly think, well, I can keep this animal because it's so docile now. It'll stay that way. And they won't. They won't. There's a reason why they don't want people bringing wild animals into their homes and keeping them as pets. Someone's probably going to ask and say, Steve, when you did that, were you breaking the law? It's an interesting question you asked here, my friends, but we're running out of time. So that's the story about the man in Garden City who's got a turkey in his backyard. It's not a pet, but it lives there and it enjoys it and he likes the company. So what can you say? Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law.
Every path has a few puddles.